And this episode of American Auto is filled with topics that could be perceived as conflicting, controversial, particularly in today's climate. So, as a director, and correct me if I'm wrong, you take a script and you try to interpret the vision of the writer or producer using sound, lighting, microphones, props, cameras, and the actors. So, what was maybe one, because we don't have a lot of time, major challenge that you faced as a woman and a director making this particular episode? And maybe you can just, if you'd like, touch up a little bit on the episode.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this episode was under the spotlight with the network, with the studio, and in a really, like supportive way. But this was, we're this episode is tackling something difficult. It's tackling abortion rights in the workplace. It's very cleverly wrapped into woke culture and different generational views on activism. It's very nuanced, but it's not your every day that you tackle topics like abortion or abortion rights in the workplace on network TV. So there were a lot of eyes on it, as there should be. And, there's, I think, pressure when you are at the helm of that episode. And everyone wants to make sure that it's being handled with the correct level of nuance and intelligence that this kind of topic requires. So, I definitely felt pressure as that, but I also felt very aligned. I've done a ton of work in the reproductive health, women's narrative sphere. So it felt like completely kismet and serendipitous that this was the story that I got to tell. It just also happened to be my very first episode of network television. So I was like, still having to, of course, earn the trust of everybody around me to say, hey, I got this. And I got this tricky topic. And I'm here to steer us and to emulate what the show is already doing, which is so successful, but also elevate the show within this specific storyline, which is new for the show, which is new for the characters and the season.
And to your point, and you beat me to it. So I sat there and I literally just absorbed the information. And as I was watching, I noticed that there were sort of little bits of other topics that were maybe sort of touched on a little bit. And correct me if I'm wrong, always, but I saw a little bit of, obviously you mentioned, right to choose, but there was also, a mention of disavowing donations, like as a corporation.
Right.
There was some feminism, a little bit of even harassment, and so many charged topics that I appreciate as a woman, as a professional in society. Now, the thing is, a lot of these topics can flare tempers, as we saw towards the end of the episode. And how was that for you, just directing that scene and, just having such a strong subject matter? And were there any concerns going into as going into the project as a director?
I didn't have any concerns about the subject matter at all. I just wanted to make sure that I was striking the right chord for NBC and for Universal and for the showrunners and the writers. I have so much respect for Elena Crivello, who wrote the episode. I think that she's brilliant. So, just wanted to make sure that I was achieving her vision and making her words pop off the page in the best way possible. I think that it was one of those things where I just had to make sure we did a lot of different takes, because oftentimes the most highly passionate, invested emotionally take is the funniest, but when you're dealing with something like this, it can be too much. Like, for example, there was a co-star character that is pro-life and is going against one of her pro-choice friends, employees, in Pain at Pain Motors. And we did a lot of different takes where they were just like, very worked up and staunch in their beliefs and like going at it. And then ones where it was more really like, okay, clearly they're friends, but they're kind of like agreeing to disagree, but it's getting tense and there's friction. Because when you are dealing with this kind of topic, it's like, yeah, is it funnier if these two friends are just going at it from a comedy perspective? Yes. Am I making a bigger statement politically by them going at it? Absolutely, because they're debating abortion and reproductive rights. So it's like the topic itself, really lent itself for me to just make sure that I covered all different versions of it. And, like with the different generations and how they handle it and woke culture, like the same thing, like, when Chloe, the IT girl in the office says like the word Nazis, or it's like, who else just did what they were told? The Nazis. Like I did takes where she just flew off the handle, because it's funny, but also Nazis is a trigger word. I'm Jewish, third generation Holocaust survivor. And then we did takes where it was more like, I'm just going to gently drop the Nazi word. So it was like, we had to do it all different ways because it is tricky. So I think in that regards, I just had to make sure that like they had all options in the edit room,
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I honestly can't imagine the challenges that come along with directing an episode like this. And I'm glad you shared that you did, have different takes and sort of just paid attention to those different perspectives. And I love that. And I appreciate it as a viewer, as a woman. I think you did an excellent job, as did the writers. And I appreciate those just being able to tackle those difficult subjects in a way where I it was sort of funny, but not funny, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, the space that I thrive in the most in my work is dark comedy. And, this show is, I would say, is a very grounded comedic tone. And this episode in particular, was a juicier episode. It was a little bit of an edgier episode. But for me, that's where I thrive, because that's where we get to play in that liminal space where it's funny, but we're also being brave and like digging into the underbelly of a situation and tackling some complicated topics like corporate culture and social issues and women's rights and gender divide and all of those things.
Covered it all in 30 minutes.
Yeah, we tried.
So the Oscars just took place in March, and in the history of these awards, I believe 7 women have been nominated as director. 3 women have won this prestigious award. NBCU's Female Forward program is a first in the industry, and the participating directors have the opportunity to shadow and then take the reins of a television episode like you did. What significance has the program had for you, and why do you think programs like this are so critical to the success of future female directors in Hollywood and television just overall?
I mean, I will sing female forwards praises all day long. And in general, any of the diversity programs, I think that, the climate is changing, but a diversity program or directing program geared towards women or underrepresented communities is absolutely like an amazing way in. I think it's really, really hard to get that first episode. There aren't that many episodes like per show, like we're sort of, especially in comedies, like it's not like necessarily like an order of 26. It's like an order of like, 10 to 12 or whatever it is. And it's like hard to get just one of those episodes. And so the fact that Female Forward guarantees an episode, not just a shadowing opportunity, I think sets it apart and is really a huge gift. So I'm very grateful because they got me my break into network television and joining the Directors Guild and all of that. I mean, I also think that like, while the climate is changing and all these opportunities are there right now, there's so much catching up to do. Men, white men in particular, had a earlier, easier entrance, like starting forever ago. So I am now competing against men that have a much bigger resume than me. So even if it's different now, if you look at like my resume versus their resume, it is hard to compete with people that have, 10, 20 years more experience because they had their foot in the door from like a buddy back in the day. So there's still just like a lot of catching up to do. And it takes a certain amount of trust on the network and studio side to say, hey, we're going to give someone their first episode. We trust them. We're going to mentor them. We believe in them. And so I'm grateful for that, because it is easier, like it's safer sometimes to just be like, oh, go with the person that has 15 credits already, but you have to give people their first job in order to change the paradigm. So I'm thrilled to like, to have that. I was going to say something else and now I'm blanking.
Well, well, hopefully, other uh, networks and just other areas of the entertainment world will follow suit.
And
That's
they
the hope.
are. Yeah, I think so. Oh, I know what I was going to say too, is like, everyone hires who they've worked with before, right? Like it happens to me all the time, like on this job I'm at right now, like, or even just this morning, I
I
had
think in many industries, right?
of course, like, because that's, it's just your world, it's your community. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't get to know more women or more people of color in your, immediate circle, you're not going to think to suggest them. You're not going to think to hire them because you just don't know them. So that's why like these things, these, programs and stuff are important, because like just today I had a cinematographer who works on TV. She just wrapped on The Rookie, and she just reached out to me and said, hey, I'm looking for a female sound operator. I feel like you always know good female crew people. And it's like, even my point is like, it's just everyone's always asking, if you're not the one hiring, everyone's always asking, hey, do you know a good fill in the blank? And so you got to like meet more people and be exposed to more people and hire new people and give them their first job. So you can say, yeah, I just worked with this amazing person. And it's, you expand your bubble. That's
Exactly. And you sort of spread it around, because if you keep hiring the same people, then you'll sort of just have the same perspective or the same type of it's one directional, and you want to be able to have just different perspectives and different people do the work. So no, that makes a lot of sense. And
absolutely.
I'm glad you mentioned it. And I think NBCU is doing an amazing job just
Yeah.
bringing forth directors like you. So I commend them as well. Now, quick question for you: how important, and I really, really, truly love this episode. How important do you think it's to tackle more of these subjects and tell more of these stories?
I think it's paramount. I mean, I think that comedy is a real gift. I think to be able to tackle difficult topics, tenderizing topics, even political topics, like with, humor, you are then tackling it in a completely different way. And you're bringing it to people's living rooms, literally, like with TV, and in a gift wrapped way. They're enjoying the ride. It's entertaining. It is funny. They're invested in the relationships. They're invested in the character, but maybe they're going to think about this topic a little bit differently after that. And it's not didactic. It's not preachy. It's not dramatic. Even I, as like, consider myself an activist, don't always want to watch the really heavy handed, straight on, sad, thing, whatever it might be. Like, but I might watch, a funny video that tackles the issue of gun safety and then realize, oh yeah, that's a good point, or whatever it is, and not necessarily want to watch some really depressing thing about like how many children die from guns each year. So it's like, it helps us think about these topics in a new way. Like literally our brain grooves like digest the information differently when it's handled through the lens of humor. And that's something that I think I intrinsically do in my life. Like I just take all the like hard stuff and I kind of like put it through the filter of humor and catharsis and all of that stuff. And so it's natural for me to want to do that in my work. And I've incidentally done it a lot. Like I mentioned gun safety because that's something that I did. I've worked with the incarcerated community through the lens of humor. I've dealt with the topic of the Holocaust through a multi-general lens, and humor, infertility, on and on, and abortion
I
as well.
commend you.
And I
I
think,
commend you. These are tough subjects, but I
yeah,
will tell you one thing as a viewer, and I will begin to wrap it up, but I do want to share this. As a viewer, the first thing I did when I finished the episode, I didn't feel heavy. I actually called a girlfriend and we had some really good conversations as I recommended the episode. So I absolutely think, humor does have, and it's just, it sort of adds an element of just delivering certain messages without making it feel so contentious and so just heavy. So I appreciate the work that you've done, and I think it's something that we should probably do a little more of.
yeah, I mean, what I love about what you just said is that it sparked a conversation. I think what the episode does really well is it's not divisive and it doesn't take a side. It's not, partisan. And I think that like that's all it's trying to do is just like, these conversations are happening in real life. So why shouldn't they be happening, on network TV as well? And I think that
Absolutely.
and it helps just keep the conversation going back in real life. It's just like, life is going to inspire art, and then art's going to inspire life, and it's going to be this symbiotic dance forever and ever. So
Absolutely. Lara, thank you so much. One of the things that I would love to ask you is for any, women that are thinking about going into directing or that are in that world right now and are facing, hurdles of any kinds. And I'm sure there's a lot of women out there with um, different types of challenges in various industries. What type of just inspiring words can you offer advice that will just encourage them to keep pushing forward in their journey? Because I think it's worth it when you're doing something you love.
yeah, I mean, I think, one thing I would say, it sounds cheesy, but like find your community, find your people, like your filmmaker buddies that are just down to like collaborate with, you're going to help each other out. Or, maybe it's like for me, I have this mom group, and there's a bunch of us in the industry, and we're just like going to be like the Illuma mommy, and like, support each other no matter what. Like, what do you need? I got you. Like, we're just going to rise up together, people that are just going to support you no matter what and not compete. So, that I think is huge, because it can feel kind of like you're going alone in the industry. And if you feel like you've got your people to bounce ideas off of, to make content with, that's huge. And then also, just everyone has a story. I think it's daunting to feel like, oh my God, there's so many amazing stories out there. I just watched everything everywhere all at once. I can't tell stories like that, but you have a story. It might not be the most complicated story, but you have a story. It's worth telling. So whether that means like you're literally putting pen to paper and writing, or collaborating with someone else, I think just not waiting for the content to come to you. We are the content. We're living it all right now, like all the time. And so be proactive about, getting your stories told, or even going to platforms, whatever it might be, that everyone's looking for something. Everyone's looking for content. Be like, oh, what are you looking for? Let me see what I have that can fit that bill. I did that with Refinery 29 and Scary Mommy and all these things, where I was, basically like, what are the needs that you need met? And then I pitched them content, and it was sort of like putting myself through film school, because it was like, okay, great. Here's content. I'll help make it. You fund it. And it's like, instead of just waiting for things to fall into your lap, like you can be proactive about and ask, like, what are people looking for, and deliver
I
things.
love that. That's you. I mean, that's really good advice. Thank you so much. I'm sure that everyone is going to absolutely love your words of encouragement. Thank you so much. You're
Thank
amazing.
you. It was really great. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Yvette. See you soon.
Thanks. Bye. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.